Hello there, digital world. Welcome back to another episode of Spliced In Later. I hope you all are doing well. No new review for you this week. Didn't catch any movies, but next week I should make up for that for a couple of things coming. Obviously, Dune Part 2 is over the horizon. I believe there's a new Megamind movie coming out, apparently. What the hell? So there should be some good content over the next few weeks. And we're still all recovering from seeing Madam Web, and however we thought about that's going to live in meme culture till the end of time. So this week is just what do I feel like talking about to all of you today? And I thought, considering at the moment it is all currently the confusion for what Madam Web the movie was when it came out, just in terms of the dialogue, the story, in retrospect to the legacy of Morbius and the total quality of what goes through the Sony production line to get these Marvel Spider-Man movies about Spider-Man out into the theaters. I thought for this week I would talk about something else, which is relatively the same thing. It's something that I was watching intently since 2021. Yes, summer of 2021, America time. England time. No, Australia time. Whatever. It was a TV show. And it's the same thing as Madam Web and Morbius. It's very bad, both production-wise, quality-wise, the whole thing. It's just an awful show, but also baffling in its execution, in terms of how the dialogue is written, the idea of how science works, or even just basic human interaction, to a point where obviously it's being baffled around a lot at the moment, that with the strikes and things on recently, that you got to keep one eye open. You got to keep a sharp eye out for the intrusion of AI in movies and TV. Whether it's something blatantly obvious, such as the AI-generated opening credits to Secret Invasion, or more hidden, where you hear someone say something in a movie, or you hear the lyrics to a song and you just go, that doesn't sound right. There's the AI sense of something's a little off. We can't prove it. We just have to assume it. But we don't have to assume it. I guess I get stuck on that regard because I don't want to just start going, oh, this is bad, AI did it. Because one, it's not fair to say, this is so bad AI did it, because you just don't know who actually is behind this stuff. For all you know, someone sat at their desk and wrote out a script, and now they sit back and they watch the reviews and people are like, clearly someone with no soul and emotion wrote this dialogue, and you go, oh, wow, what does that say about me? So you have to be really careful talking about that stuff. But at the same time, for something like this that I just watched, which is a TV show, just about 3 seasons. The last season was only 6 episodes, so it doesn't really count, I suppose. It's more like 2.5 seasons. I put in the effort. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I stuck with them longer than probably 99% of the world did, to a point where even though it is baffling in its execution, just like Madam Web, it's nowhere near become the meme culture because no one watching or cares or understands. So today's episode is basically not going to be an analysis of the show or a deep dive into the plot lines or anything like that. It's just going to be me going, what the fuck did I just watch? Today we are talking about Brea, a network television show from NBC that aired from September 2021 until, as the time of this recording, last week in the middle of February 2024. 3 seasons, not particularly long seasons. The first season was 10 episodes. The second season was 14 episodes, split into 7-episode periods of release, I suppose. You got like 7 episodes in the back half of 2022 and another 7 in the front half of 2023. And then this final season was really only 6 episodes. And they knew going into that season that there would be no more seasons. It wasn't cancelled. They didn't get to a point where they were telling a story and they went, nope, you're not telling anymore. But at the same time, they were told, if you're expecting another season of 14 episodes, you're not getting that. You're getting 6, and be happy with the 6 and wrap it up. Designed by NBC, very much so to be the next big mystery / stand around the water cooler and talk show, which every show on network television has tried to achieve that success that Lost generated back in 2004. Lost was on ABC for 6 seasons. You all know the tale of the people in the paying cash who land on the island, and then crazy stuff happens. Now, Lost has had a bit of an unfair reputation, I think. It got very intense, very large. There were a lot of stories and mysteries, and a few mysteries didn't go anywhere, and some other resolutions were not particularly satisfying, which is the case for big shows. You can argue that for a bunch of different things. No one's ever going to 100% stick the landing. Very few cases do that. But because the ending of Lost is so divisive, and because a lot of people who are banking on having such a... they wanted that show to really end well for them, people look back on Lost now and go, Lost, what a bad show. So stupid, so over the top and all over the place, and doesn't make any sense. And I don't think that's particularly fair, because that detracts from Lost being very, very good in the beginning, and for the most part being very loyal and faithful to its characters, and the stories that they went on, and the way they interacted with each other. Lost had some of the best writing on a TV show that I've ever seen. Maybe not in the later ones, and maybe not in its execution when you think about how the bar has only risen since Lost, with things like Breaking Bad and The Last of Us and things like that. But Lost changed the game, I think, for the ability to tell serialized television show stories on network television. You know, most of the time it is police procedurals or status quo shows where no one is expected to tune into every single episode and have to follow a storyline that tells a little bit one episode and then moves on, and you've got to watch next week to find out more. Something like NCIS, you tune in, there might be some overarching arc that they reference to, but for the most part, it's a case of the week story. Smallville did it too. You had your freak of the week. Clark had to go up against another kryptonite-infused teenage crazy person. Star Trek, as much as it's a great show where they go places, every time you checked in on that starship, they were doing the same thing they were doing the last week for the most part. As we've evolved in television and things have moved more to streaming and shortened seasons where you don't need filler, serialized storytelling has become the norm. You know, you've got it all on Netflix and HBO Max and all of that. But in Lost Day, not so much. And it was huge. Brought in huge ratings. People were talking about it. Hence the phrase water cooler show. People would talk about it the next day after watching it and discuss theories. And then they'd have watch parties. Game of Thrones did the same sort of thing. So especially on network television, which today is struggling with the fact that these days people just don't watch free-to-air TV. You know, they watch it all on streaming. Even things that air on free-to-air, they just wait till it's up on a streaming site or on YouTube or something like that. So the ratings are down, which is why shows only last like 1 or 2 seasons on a network thing, and then they get cancelled immediately and replaced by something else. The only shows that manage to kick on are probably shows that old people are watching, that have just been watching it since as long as they can remember, and that's just how they do it. That's why your NCISs keep going on. That's why the Chicago World keeps going on, Law and Order, you know, that sort of stuff. But the networks are still trying. They're still trying to get that show with that mystery, that hook that immediately makes you go, ooh, this is interesting. I want to know what's happening. I need to keep watching for answers. In recent years, Manifest was probably the closest thing that came to Lost. Nowhere near as good in its execution and quality, but it did succeed in having a genuine mystery of people on a plane who disappear for 5.5 years. Where did they go? What happened to them? Was it divine intervention? Was it a science experiment? Who knows? And even when that show got cancelled on the network television, such a love for it meant that it got to finish properly on Netflix. So La Brea was NBC's next attempt at doing that. The concept of the show is very intriguing and could make for good television if executed correctly. What happens is that people are driving through La Brea, everything is normal. If you don't know what La Brea is, it's an area of Los Angeles near the La Brea tar pits. A massive sinkhole opens up and a whole bunch of people fall into it. The main characters that we follow in this story are a family that are struggling. They're broken up due to some issues. The mother and the son fall in the sinkhole. The father and the daughter do not. But the people who fall in the sinkhole, surprise, surprise, do not die. They wake up many, many years in the past. Somehow they all decide it's 10,000 BC, so I'm just going to say it's 10,000 BC. But they're millions and millions of years ago. They're still in La Brea, they're still in Los Angeles, but now it's back with woolly mammoths and ice ages and killer locusts and all of that stuff. So these people that fell through the sinkhole, they're all from different areas, different walks of life, different ways of reacting to the situation, but they all kind of have to band together and figure out how to survive and find a way to get home, and also sort of figure out what's going on. On the other side of that, the mother and daughter are investigating in the present day, looking into other sinkholes that have opened up and government investigations into how people aren't dying but are in fact traveling to different points in time, yada, yada, yada. For the first season, those two storylines work in tandemonium to each other before they eventually sync up to all be in the past in the second season. The father and daughter make their way back to try and rescue everybody, get trapped as well, or whatever. And then it starts spiraling into time portals, and then people are going to the 80s and the 60s, and there are other people in 10,000 BC from other different periods of time. Some are even from the future. So there's a lot of different twists and turns and things that are happening. But the heart of the story always seems to be this particular family just wants to reunite with each other and get home. And their family is intricately linked to organizations and things that are going on involved with time travel and the sinkhole. It's very, very much like Lost. In Lost, it's them stuck on the island and trying to get home. In La Brea, it's them stuck in the past and trying to get home. So that first episode, there was something about it. Like, I watched it and went, this is like bad. But it could be like a bad in a fun way sort of thing. The mystery itself still showed promise. So I could look past, some poor acting, some strange dialogue choices. The fact that they were filming in Australia and just pretending they were in Los Angeles, fine, whatever. As long as you give me good mystery, and each episode I'm like, ooh, I want to know more. But what this show became was a baffling display of people just throwing a bunch of shit at the wall, seeing what sticks, and then writing about it without really thinking about what they just witnessed. It's a show that does not understand how the concept of time works and doesn't expect anybody else to ask questions about it. It's a show where the budget crashed immensely. So rather than try and work with what they had, their ambition was way too high, meaning you just had terrible looking CGI dinosaurs and strange character movements due to the availability of actors or the inability to pay them. And then a complete fall down once they realized that whatever story they were planning to tell, if they were even planning to tell a story, they wouldn't have the time to do everything they wanted to do. So they sort of had to wrap it all up. But if the ending was what the ending was going to be, I'm glad it didn't end up being 6 seasons to tell it, because the last season that I just watched was only 6 episodes. And as I said, in the beginning, there was some good faith. There were enough characters in it where I was like, I like this person. I see some potential there. Oh, that's interesting enough. I can see where this might be going, and I'm interested to see how they get there. The last 6 episodes, man. Okay, so I have to try and give them the benefit of the doubt, because La Brea is also infamously one of those shows that continued on in production while the big writers and actors strike of 2023 was still going on. If you aren't familiar with that strike, that's okay. I don't know how you could be, because basically it's the reason why you never got to see anything new for about 6 months of 2023, and how we're going to run out of new stuff about halfway through this year just because of what was able to be made. But basically, writers and actors, they all struck against the greedy Hollywood corporations for a number of reasons, mainly because they weren't being paid the royalties and subsidiaries for the transition for network television to streaming. On network television, if your show hits syndication or whatever, or every time your show is re-shown, you earn royalties for that. On streaming, there was apparently no way to match how much that was happening. So the actors and writers just got nothing, but the big greedy fat cats got everything. And then there was a push for writers to get them out of the room as quickly as possible so they didn't have to pay them more. Then potential, like, what if we don't even use writers? We could just use AI to write this stuff for us. We can use AI to scan the likeness of background extras, so we only need them for 1 day of work, and then we can use their likeness till the end of time. All a bunch of stuff. It took a long time to resolve it in some capacity, but things are back to normal as they can be in 2024. But some shows kept on during that, for better or for worse. For La Brea, I don't think there was any ill intent to it. It got through on a loophole in that it was being shot in Australia. So a lot of the actors involved in the production of La Brea are Australian, not under the American Actors and Writers Union. So they were able to kick on, but also on a reduced budget because I guess the companies were losing money. And even though they had actors, they couldn't have all the actors. Some of the actors, due to availability, couldn't come back down to Australia for that final season. Due to the current strikes on principle, they didn't come back down. I believe they also moved production in Australia to a different part of Australia, meaning their current access to the sets that had been established had to be changed. Basically, the show just became a big green screen of like a show that used to have 14 main characters and then whittled down by the end to about 6 that bothered to stick around until the end. The writing suddenly got even worse than what it had been before. I do have the strongest theory that AI could have been used during this point because of the strikes. I don't know. It's all just theory. It's conspiracy stuff on my part. But it got really bad. And I have to believe that there weren't actual humans doing this stuff, because even if humans didn't write the scripts, surely someone who read it afterwards would go, humans don't talk like that. Anyway, I don't know. But also, the show kind of sucked before we even got to that point, so I'm not really sure. To give you an example of how it's silly and didn't make any sense, it didn't care. There's a point in the second season where 2 of the characters, Josh and Riley, teenage starstruck lovers that fall in love in 10,000 BC. They accidentally go through a wormhole or a time portal or whatever, and they end up in 1988. So now a big bit of the story is trying to get them back to 10,000 BC or to the present. It's not really played. Just the family just wants to reunite. Look, Lost did time travel, and arguably that's where the show started to fall apart a little bit, but whatever. Time travel is an interesting sci-fi concept that can be utilized tremendously well if done correctly. For La Brea, it's very clear that they didn't understand how time works, how if you mess with the past, how it changes someone's future or present. Now, you could say, oh, it's subjective. Time travel can be however you think about it. But I think there's enough solid time travel stories that show at least a basic sense of how it works. Anyway, in 1988, these 2 characters realize that another sinkhole is going to open up on Santa Monica Pier. When that happens, all the water in Santa Monica Pier will fall through the sinkhole and flood everybody in 10,000 BC. I think. Sometimes they said that there would be a tidal wave that would wipe out 1988 Los Angeles. Not exactly clear. But while they were finding this out, they were interacting with people who had connection to a secret base in 10,000 BC, where they were opening all sorts of time portals and doing. The overall point at that point was the people who had created the wormholes had come from the future, from a point where the human race had run out of resources and the earth was collapsing on itself and dying. So they were escaping to the past, I think. They weren't talking about fixing the future. They were just like, we just want to live in the past where we're safe, at the expense of everybody else, I guess. So they're in this special tower in 10,000 BC learning all this stuff. And then one of the characters there is the father of the girl who's in 1988. This is so complicated while I try to explain it to you. But she's like, I need to get a message to my dad and the others in 10,000 BC that this tidal wave is coming. Wait a minute. He lives in Santa Monica Pier. I'm going to go talk to his younger self. Now, what I would do is she could find out, look for his clothes, maybe leave a note in her jacket pocket or in his shoe, or she says something to him that will click for him at some point later on. But what happens is, and that's terrible. That's me trying to make it work, and it sounds terrible. But what's much worse here, she goes up to her past dad and says, "Hi, you don't know me, but I know you. And one day you're going to be in 10,000 BC. And when you do, you have to be ready because a sinkhole will open and the tidal wave will come and kill you." And the guy's like, "Okay, that was a weird thing for you to say to me, whatever." But then in 10,000 BC, he's walking along and he suddenly grabs his head and he says, and I shit you not, "I'm having a new memory. Oh, it's my daughter. She said a tidal wave's coming." They treat memories like a walkie-talkie, like a phone that you can just access and immediately recall all the information you need. A lot of the big hook of the dad's mystery from the main family is that he's an alcoholic because he's plagued by visions of terrible things. And it turns out, spoilers I guess, that those are repressed memories from when he was a kid, because as a kid he lived with these people in 10,000 BC. In retrospect, that kind of makes sense. But once that twist is revealed, they start using his memory as a way to know where things are and where to go. And he has complete recall of the minuscule details. Now, I'm only 31, and I can barely remember what happened to me 3 years ago. I do not believe that if I needed to remember a specific point in time, that I could just go, "Yep, there it is. That's what happened. Let's go." Not possible. It's so ludicrous. And that's kind of what relates to Madam Web as well. It's baffling that people in any capacity who are greenlighting this stuff will go, "Yep, perfect. Fine. Makes sense. Put it out there." Unless you don't care or are lazy. And the current state of Hollywood, both of those things are probably accurate. So it's stuff like that, and then you'd have things where they'd go, "Oh no, the firestorm is coming this way." And it's like, shit, a firestorm, that's not good. But then they just get in their cars and wait for it to go by. In 10,000 BC, there's probably a devastating firestorm. Another line which is stuck for me forever is when they were hanging out in their little 10,000 BC base, and then suddenly a plague of killer wasps awaken from hibernation beneath them, which is fine. That can happen. Two characters are away when that happens, and when they come back, it's eerily quiet, and they don't know what's going on. And then one of the characters, Scott, who's like this stoner Australian weed man, quickly pulls them into a car before they're stung by the wasps. But then he says to them, "Those wasps woke out of hibernation and chased us around. I saw I was about to be stung, so I got in here." How do you see you're about to be stung? The general feeling is everybody will be stung unless they move. But did he see a wasp coming at him and be like, "That will sting me in 3 seconds unless I move my body"? Phew. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little harsh. But if you're regular listeners here on this show, you know that it takes a lot for me to be negative about anything because I'm an anxiety-riddled, crazy person. I don't like poo-pooing on other people's stuff. Plus, art is subjective. What I may like, you may hate, and vice versa. It's not so much that I hate things where I feel like I have to talk about them here. It's more confusion, I think. Anyway, it got to a point where the last season was coming out, and I did not have high hopes for it. But, it's the last season. And stubbornly, I stick to things. If I pick up a show, I'm going to watch it till the end, even if I know from the very beginning I don't like it. I watched that True Lies TV reboot last year, and I knew from the very first episode that 1, it wasn't good, 2, it wasn't for me, and 3, it would not make it past the first season unless there was a genuine fluke. But I stuck with it, and I tuned in, and I watched all 13 episodes every week, even though I did not enjoy doing it. And it was the same with Brea. I stuck with it. I even watched some episodes while we were traveling in America in 2022. I had my poor friend have to sit in that hotel room while I put the first episode of season 2 on. And to be fair, he laughed a lot. So maybe it wasn't a bad experience. But it's I can't blame the actors, really. There's a lot of good actors in here who have been in some good stuff. John Cena is the main one that springs to mind. He was one of the main characters in the Pacific. He's been in the Chicagoverse and Chicago PD and Chicago Justice. He's genuinely a really good actor. And some of the lines he has to deliver in here is absolutely stupid. And then the poor guy's always having to run back and forth everywhere, and he doesn't look like he enjoys doing it. One of the supporting characters, who also just disappears in the third season because I guess they didn't have time to bring back his character, is played by Mark Lee, who is the main star of Gallipoli, one of the most impactful war films of all time. Nuts. And, Australia. I'm always glad to see my country representing or contributing to the production of film and television. It's nice that, especially with a lot of things this year, you're seeing Australia being used to be the setting for stories. Anything But You, the romantic comedy, came out recently, set in Australia. There's the stunt comedy thing with Ryan Gosling coming up soon, The Fall Guy, that's set in Sydney. It's a little annoying when they film in Australia but pretend it's not Australia, but I don't mind. It helps give people jobs. That really famous scene in The Wolverine where he gets stabbed at the Japanese funeral, that's shot in like a little Japanese square at Circular Quay here in Sydney. That's pretty awesome. The problem with shooting in the outback for Australia, I guess the idea of it is as well as that because of the outback, it kind of looks wild and wilderness, so it could be 10,000 BC, whatever. But then they have to pretend they're in America and a lot of Australia beaches. And Australian beaches and American beaches, especially the difference between the Santa Monica beaches and a general Sydney beach, vastly different, as different as night and day. And this show was made for America. It wasn't made for Australians. So Americans are probably sitting there going, I've been to Santa Monica Pier. I've been to Venice Beach. Not only does it not look like that, but it doesn't, it's just no feasible way that you could think that we would be fooled into thinking it looks like that. Just little bits like that, which just sort of bamboozle you. So the final season, it just wrapped. It was a complete 6-episode, uninterrupted run. As I said, a lot of reasons might be why the quality and everything just nosedived tremendously from where it was already at a low point. Half the cast were gone, were not there. The dialogue was insane. Storylines were either dropped entirely, or wrapped up in a very confusing, rushed mess, while at the same time still embarking on storylines that made no sense to be doing in a 6-episode limited run. At this point, you just want to be revealing the reasons why everything has happened on a show like this. You want to know why all these people fell through the sinkhole and what the ultimate goal is. So while all that's going on, I don't give two shits whether the daughter is going to fall in love with some girl from the tribe they found in 10,000 BC. I don't care about that. I don't care if another girl gets to represent the people sitting on the tribe's council. Because who cares? It's 3 episodes away. Either they're going to get home or they're not. I don't care if she gets a say in whether they harvest at winter or not. Who cares? But whatever. So 6 episodes, and the whole point of the show to be like, what was the point of it all? Very much screamed an AI solution. Somebody put into an AI system, what would be the reason why there's an army base in 10,000 BC, and what is their goal with the sinkholes and the time travel technology. And it turns out that there's a rogue army base in 10,000 BC that want to install time travel, and I shit you not, time travel capabilities into fighter jets, which they will use to win all wars. I don't know how you install time travel capability into fighter jets. I don't know how that could be used to win a war. Time travel would just not have war, I guess, or make more war. I don't know. But the idea that that's it, this is the big thing. The reason why all these people have been put through hell is because, war fighter planes was so infuriating. And then, look, it was a complete mess those last few episodes. They had scenes which clearly they wanted to do, but didn't either have time to do, or didn't have the availability of actors to do, or AI wrote it. There's a scene, for example, where they're doing their final fight on the base and two of the characters notice a girl's being abducted by, get this, her own mother, because her own mother is revealed to be the ultimate big bad guy, and her daughter was sort of their friend but then got taken, so I forgot all about her. But anyway, there she is again. So the two characters, Scott and Lucas, go, okay, we're doing the heroic thing. We're going to split off from you and we're going to try and save her. And off they run. And I'm not kidding. In the very next scene, the characters have run into a hangar, and then Scott and Lucas run back in behind them. And they're like, we did it. We saved her and we told her to run away. What? At least have that happen 2 scenes later. Don't let it happen immediately. And that feels like a scene that we should have seen. There's so many scenes in that final episode where they talk about other things that you did not see. Which brings me to the very final thing I want to talk about here. The main character of the show, Eve, played by Natalie Zia. So as I said, the main characters mainly were this Harris family. Eve's the mother, Gavin's the father, Izzy's the daughter, Josh is the son. But for the most part, Eve was the main character, the voice of the people, the heart and soul, the one who was uniting everybody in 10,000 BC, who was risking her life to unite her family, going through all sorts of stuff, craziness. At the end of season 2, she was pulled into a time portal and separated from the other family. Now, before I think they knew they were only getting a 6-episode run, they'd already said that she was going to be back on the show, but in a limited capability. I believe the actor had already fled to LA at that point. I think she knew the stinker show she was on and just wanted to get away. But they're like, don't worry, she will be back before the end of the show. We keep showing her in the trailers, she'll be back. I found out afterwards that she was only available for a day of shooting and back in Los Angeles. So not with everybody else where all the climactic thing was taking place, but by a tree up in the near the Griffith Observatory. So they shot 2 scenes, one before, which is a flashback before anything happened, where she's saying, I love you, Gavin. I'm having 8 babies. How great. We're going to be together forever. And then the very last scene of the whole show where she reunites with the family after they've all got back from 10,000 BC. But for the most of season 3, they were trying to find out where she was. She was being held on the army base eventually, so they knew they had to go and rescue her. So one of the characters splits off to go and find her. And then just like the Scott and Lucas thing I mentioned with the daughter, eventually that character comes back and she just says pretty much this. I found Eve. She was being transported by the army. I started fighting them and she fought with me. We fought very hard, almost to the last man, but they overwhelmed us. Then I got pinned down and she was able to get a bomb, and she's like, I'm going to destroy all the portals because I have to save my family and I respect her as a person, so she's run off to do that. So we have to go do this now. She's going to do that. This is all, you haven't seen any of this. This is just being told this happened. I have no words for that. My mouth was open watching that episode, and the way the family was like, yep, we respect her wishes, let's go. It's like, you just traveled to 1969 or whatever to find her, and now she's run off to do something else, and you're just going to go, yeah, okay, cool. Look, at the end of the day, it's, as I said, this wasn't an analysis of La Brea, its characters, its meanings, its purposes. It's me baffled, just going, what the hell was this show that I forced myself to watch for 3 seasons, for 3 years, with the most terrible writing, with the most baffling decisions, character-wise, production-wise, that was boring or annoying or genuinely confusing, something that I wanted to be lost or even manifest, and I didn't get that. Basically, the point of me talking about it is because not a single soul that I know watched this show, I should say. It's over. No one was watching it. No one cared that I was watching it. I was not able to just vent my confusion and frustration to anybody during this 3-season run, this 30-episode cinematic extravaganza that is La Brea. So this episode is just me saying what I would have said to other people if I had been able to. But also, if you all out there are enjoying the bonkersness that Madam Web has generated for you meme-wise, I know people are laughing at the funny dialogue, the strange character choices, everything that made Morbius great 2 years ago, then I do recommend for you to watch La Brea, or at the very least, just watch the 3rd season without any context about who anybody is or what's going on. And you will be bamboozled. You will be flabbergasted. You will laugh unironically at just the batshit insanity stupidity that it is. And then come back and tell me, please, because that would be nice. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed. As I said, next week I've got a couple more reviews coming for you. Dune and Megamind, if that does come out next week, I think. There's some more movies in May to talk... March! God damn it. To talk about. I'll be checking in some more MCU stuff. So yeah, more content coming. But I hope you have enjoyed this little segue to 10,000 BC and the nightmare insanity that was La Brea. So until next time, I love and appreciate you as always. You've been spliced in later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.